Lizzie Daly, wildlife biologist and broadcaster, and I'm delighted that you can join us for this important and timely discussion about the role technology can and will play in fighting climate change. As you know, COP26 is just around the corner and all eyes are on Glasgow as world leaders prepare to set out the actions they plan to take. But we know that we all have a role to play as individuals, companies, charities and governments, and we'll need to use all the tools that we can, which is why technology will have such a critical role to play.
Tackling the climate crisis is the biggest and most urgent challenge facing the planet. Fortunately, some of the world's sharpest minds are already on the case. Engineers, academics, innovators and startups are finding solutions both big and small to limit the rise in global warming. For example, advances in renewable energy are providing an alternative to humanity's reliance on fossil fuels. Technologies like AI are helping communities to reduce waste, saving pressures on the energy grid. And every day, more and more electric vehicles powered by new age batteries are overtaking the polluting petrol and diesel engines on our roads. Tech is also helping save Earth's natural habitats and ecosystems. Bioacoustic monitoring, combined with AI and cloud technology, is allowing conservationists to better understand and protect endangered species and habitats in real time like never before. In Brazil, Peru, Cameroon and Sumatra, Nature Guardian devices alert rangers to illegal logging and poaching in rainforests. Off Ireland's southern coast, whales and dolphins are being protected from commercial shipping with the help of acoustic monitoring. And here in the UK, a new project is allowing us to apply similar innovations to help conserve the indigenous but endangered red squirrel. Technology can help in the fight against climate change, but there's so much more to do to make sure we seize the opportunities before us. What can we do today to ensure that we have the infrastructure, the investment, and the skills to rise to the challenge planet Earth is facing?
There you go, so lots to discuss, and later we'll be talking to some of the people behind extraordinary projects protecting the planet's natural habitats and wildlife. Plus we'll be asking what more the UK can do to train the developers, the engineers and innovators of the future. But first, I'm delighted to be joined by my first panel to discuss the role tech can play in reducing carbon emissions, which is crucial in limiting the rise in global temperatures. First, Kevin McCann, Policy Manager of Solar Energy UK, and next to him is Jessica Ocampos, co-founder and CEO of CamNexus, and finally Matt Howitt, founder and principal analyst of Assembly Research. Hello everyone, good to have you all here.
Good morning.
Kevin, we'll start with you if that's okay. Obviously the switch to greener and cleaner energy is high on the list for hitting kind of net zero. Can you explain more about how solar energy fits into that?
Sure, and thank you for having us this morning. I mean, the UK has a thriving solar power industry. We represent more than 250 solar energy companies who are working on a range of really different, interesting and exciting technologies. Our ambition is to support the deployment of 40 gigawatts of solar power by 2030, which would be a big increase on what we've got at the moment. And that will help, as we've heard in the video previously, to decarbonise carbon emissions from the electricity supply, but also from the other big challenges relating to, for example, transport and clean heating, which is a really important aspect of reaching net zero by 2050 as well.
This is going to sound like a really obvious question, but we live in a place which doesn't get a lot of sun. So people watching at home may be thinking, solar power energy, how does that work? Is it as effective in a place like the UK, which is so cloudy?
No, it's a fair question. Yeah, I think that is a bit of a misperception, but absolutely, the solar industry in the UK, as I said, works really well. You don't actually need direct sunlight for solar panels today. Obviously, on a beautiful day like this morning in London, you're producing a lot of power, but solar works all year round, and that's really important from the perspective of people who want, for example, to invest money, because you know that you can forecast the amount of power that you're going to produce and therefore the amount by which you'll be able to help reduce carbon emissions and also, of course, generate an investment, a financial return rather on investment.
There's big, exciting movements kind of in that space. I want to hear more about some of the exciting projects we discussed earlier. But Jessica, lovely to see you here. Your work is fascinating. You use AI and IoT in the help for water management. Can you tell us more about how that works and why that's so important?
Well, actually, I come from Chile, the north of Chile, which is one of the driest places on Earth, with a lot of solar radiation. And so I experienced firsthand the scarcity of water. And this is it's a problem that we're living everyone in the world. It's not just the problem of remote areas. In the UK, we're losing 20% of the clean water is being lost along the supply network for getting to the end user, like you or myself. So the system that we're using is combining sensors that can take data in real time or near real time and anticipate leakage, for example, in this aging infrastructure, and also to help have a better reading of the consuming of the water. Therefore, we can better satisfy the demand with the supply, because water is a precious, precious resource.
Why do you think, kind of until now, this is an area that perhaps hasn't been high on the priority list? Because, as you say, it's a precious resource, right?
Well, actually, it is now very aligned with the net zero strategy. Actually, there's a roadmap for Water UK, which is driving this target of reduction of water losses and to improve the infrastructure. We know that probably, actually, one of the key challenges that the sector has is they are kind of behind in digitalization and the uptake of a smart infrastructure. If you compare it to any other type of industrial sector, the water utility is a bit behind, and we need to support that.
Okay, brilliant. I want to hear more about that as well. Matt, lovely to see you here today.
Lovely to see you.
You are Principal Analyst at Assembly Research, and you had a recent publication specifically looking at connectivity and how it can help reduce carbon emissions in transport. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to be able to do this piece of research in obviously what is a very important year for the UK. And what we found is that if you improve the connectivity that all of us as individuals have access to, then we think you could remove something like 27.8 megatons of CO2e related emissions from transport, which is a huge amount of carbon that could be taken out. And we think you can do that both directly and indirectly. So when we talk about directly, we mean removing cars from the road, we're making those cars more efficient in the way that they travel through our cities, or indirectly by, for example, how we all work from home during the last sort of 18 months and cutting back on those commutes. And that is a huge area in particular that we think you can save an incredible amount of carbon, something like 109 kilograms per person, which in other terms is something like a baby elephant, a huge amount of carbon every year that we could save by just working from home 1 day a week.
And I guess last year was obviously devastating for so many reasons, but I guess it was the first example of actually what will happen, where you're able to physically see the benefits of having that kind of working from home and that access to not travel to work and things. So was it an opportunity to kind of look at the future of how we travel and work?
I think so. I think it was perhaps one of the the rare positives from the pandemic is to see what could be possible if we change our behaviour. And I think we saw emissions fall off almost overnight because of that reduction, particularly in commuting. And it's kind of forced us to change our behaviour, hasn't it? The way that we are working, the way that we are taking part in events like this. We don't always have to attend all of those things together. But to do it well, we need to rely on improved connectivity, which is what we need to make sure we roll out quicker and faster, particularly to those rural parts of the country where people have some of the longer commutes and where you contribute some of the greater carbon.
Brilliant. Okay. Jessica, you mentioned that kind of smart infrastructure that's in place. Is it there in place to make the most of the benefits of your technology and what you guys do?
Well, actually, connectivity is a huge issue. And so we're talking of actually technology, and we saw that last year too, can create a huge gap. We can increase the inequality in the world if we don't make it properly available. So, and if we don't make the adoption of that capacity in the population. So we need to realize that today the world, there's probably more than, so we still have almost half of the population without connectivity, and that is really important. So we know there's a high rate of catching up. The ITU has said that we still need to work more in that direction, particularly if we're talking about how we can make smarter some industries, particularly, for example, utilities. You're talking of rural areas or remote areas, and that means an effort of infrastructure that is not normally there. So what we are doing, for example, in our case, is combining our low power technology in a way to extend the areas where you already have some connectivity. So you still can reach, in a way, it's not the last mile, it's like the last 10 miles.
Yeah.
But in order to reach to those areas that are not yet now covered. And that is really important, to work collaboratively to make this happen.
And what support do you need for that to become a reality and for you and your work to grow?
Yeah, I think the collaboration and something like we're doing here today. So we need to think that, for example, as I said, the water utility is maybe one of example of the one that are behind, a bit behind, and they're trying to catch up. So we need to make them available, all these type of technology, saying what will be the value to the final line, or to the KPI, to the end user, to who they serve. The collaboration approach that we can take, for example, with some large telecom companies, or with companies that are providing with some particular large technologies in connectivity, with companies like us who are smaller but are producing the applications. So the application and the infrastructure together can make a huge impact from the supply. Still, we need to work on the demand.
Yeah.
And that is the other side for policy discussion as well.
Yeah, exactly. A big job, but very exciting movements, definitely. Kevin, I'd like to come to you because, and put simply, I'd love to know how much solar power we actually need, because the Climate Change Committee called for the solar energy industry in the UK to triple in size by 2030. So kind of what does that look like from your perspective?
Sure. So yes, they've called for, I think, up to 54 gigawatts of generation capacity by 2035. And we're calling, as I said previously, our ambition is for 40 gigawatts to be delivered by 2030. To put that into context, there's about 14 gigawatts at the moment, which is, equivalent to several very large conventional power generation stations. One of the good things in this is that there's loads of really exciting work going on to maximise the potential of solar power. So if you think, for example, of a solar farm, so when you've got some land area, for example, with lots of panels installed on that land, some new farms now, they install the panels on a tracker system. So what it does is it follows the sun from where it rises in the east through to the west in a day, and that maximises the amount of power that can be produced. So there's lots of exciting sort of new developments in the technology that are going on to help us reach that target.
Yeah, lots of exciting things. I mean, you mentioned a list of things earlier about how we're adapting, and these new technologies are so exciting in that respect. Matt, I'll come to you. Electric vehicles, big area of conversation for so many of us as we move forward to become more green. We know the technology is advancing, but is the UK ready to switch, do you think?
It's a big one, isn't it? I think.
Do you drive an electric car?
I don't drive an electric car. I cycle. Doing my bit.
Yeah, because I've got a hybrid, and even things like charging stations and the like. It's just curious to know some places are better adapted than others.
Yes, and I think that one is probably the biggest, is making sure that infrastructure is in place, because we can't obviously expect people to move to these alternatives if they can't imagine being able to take the journeys that they were used to, because I think that's the key thing. It's not sort of getting people to completely change their behaviour overnight. It's sort of a gradual thing. So making sure that they can, travel where they need to, and that infrastructure is in place to support it is important. But it's also, I guess, about connecting those vehicles as well that are on the road, even, some of the petrol and hybrid vehicles that, currently being used, because then they can communicate with the traffic systems, they can reduce the congestion. If they space themselves better, they can reduce collisions, which again reduces traffic, which is causing some of the pollution. So I think it's about making those vehicles on the road more intelligent, even the more sort of polluting ones.
And out of curiosity, the people in the UK, do you think they themselves and their mindset and generally are ready for electric cars and to have that kind of smart city as you've outlined?
I think people are definitely coming around to it, and I think in your opening remarks you said that this is sort of incumbent on all of us to do something, and I think we just need to identify what those things are that we can do as individuals. I think we need to see the improvement in the infrastructure in order to make that switch easier for us to do. And I think we need to make sure that the connectivity is in place so that when they are on the road, that they can start delivering some of the benefits that we talk about.
Yeah, brilliant. Jessica, this is obviously such a big year with COP26 round the corner now. Are you feeling positive and excited about kind of the movement moving forward and the goals, I say, overall globally and here in the UK for how we are going to move forward?
Well, one of the things that we do, and actually probably a lot of my answers are kind of a bit global because we have operations in Latin America, also in Africa, and here in the UK. So I see that is kind of positive because we see a move globally. You know? And of course, having a COP very close home, it makes us maybe more advocate about this. Now, so we have to be in that position. I think that we really need to combine all the sectors. So as coming back to, for example, the previous question, one of the challenges is that we don't have a power. For example, we cannot power underground necessarily the same infrastructure of the water system. And that's not probably, and that depends a lot on countries per countries. In some areas, even you don't have this infrastructure to provide with water. So, so we really need to combine the efforts in all these different sectors and understand if you have an infrastructure in place to make more resilient cities, you can think in all the different layers to provide a very sustainable system for the whole city and our communities. Yeah. So I really think that the efforts are being done, but we still need to do more. We really need to do more. I was in Connected Britain a couple of weeks ago also with Huawei, and I could not see many companies saying sustainability at all. So it's really important that we are there, present with technology and sustainability together.
Yeah. Intrinsically linked with everything that we do and across all of your different sectors. Kevin, kind of similar question to you, obviously COP26 around the corner, but for those watching who may be thinking, wow, solar power is the way forward, you know, what would be your takeaway, or what would you want them to know about what you do and why it's so important?
I think I would say that the solar power industry has a huge amount to offer, as we were saying previously, despite what sort of people may think about its viability. The industry is fully subsidy-free. There's sort of three main markets in the solar power industry. So the sort of residential, domestic sector, so that's people putting solar panels on their roofs. Commercial industrial, so that's sort of businesses or perhaps factories and manufacturing plants. And then also the grid scale, the solar farms that we discussed previously. Solar power is already a very popular technology. So for example, there's already 1 million homes in the UK with solar on their roofs. And I think that's testament to the potential that solar has. But I think it really speaks to the point that Matt and Jessica have made about how all of this needs to join up. We need the connectivity to connect the power created by sort of smart solar homes with the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, with the work that's being done to support the utilities. And, you know, water companies, for example, use a lot of energy because they're pumping around water, and that takes a lot of energy usage as well. So it's about getting that infrastructure right so that everything sort of talks to, all the technologies talk to each other and make sure that their potential is realised, really.
Well, lots of exciting changes. I think you'll all agree. So inspiring to hear all about your work today. So thank you all for coming in. It's been fantastic hearing more about what you guys do. So now, did you know that right now in half a dozen rainforests across 3 continents, bioacoustic devices are listening out for the sounds of illegal logging and poaching, using cloud technology and artificial intelligence to alert local rangers and protect thousands of hectares of vulnerable habitats. It's the result of the hard work and dedication of an amazing charity called Rainforest Connection, and I caught up with their chief scientist Marconi campus yesterday. He was speaking to me from his home in the mountains of Puerto Rico, and I started by asking him to explain the charity's mission and how technology helps to achieve its goals.
The main goal of Rainforest Connection is to accelerate the protection, preservation, and understanding of the natural world through the power of sound. We aim to provide conservationists, scientists, and supporters with data-driven insights that will advance and automate ecosystem conservation and species protection. And for doing that, we are developing a global acoustic network for stopping illegal logging, poaching, mining, and to monitor biodiversity in real time. State-of-the-art technology is helping us to achieve our goals by providing cost-effective solutions to acquire data in remote places around the globe, to store and process this data using user-friendly interfaces, and using AI models to extract useful biological in ecological information from audio recordings.
Great stuff. And can you explain a bit more about the technology? What is used and how does it work?
Sure. So right now we are developing and combining acoustic sensors, solar-powered batteries, artificial intelligence, and cloud computing to improve long-term monitoring of biodiversity and track conservation efforts. Actually, we are creating an entire and complete ecosystem, acoustic ecosystem to help everyone in all steps of acoustic monitoring. So these technologies include inexpensive and high quality audio recorders, a mobile app to guide data collection, a desktop app to help the upload of the data, and a cloud-based repository for the audio recordings that provides data exploration and analytical tools. Our Arbimon web-based platform provides a user-friendly interface for storing, managing, exploring, visualizing, and analyzing audio recordings using different models to extract insights on species, ecosystem, and interventions.
I mean, that's so impressive to hear. And obviously you mentioned big things there, ecosystems, biodiversity, but can you give us an example of how the technology has actually improved or saved or helped an ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the best examples on how technology is helping us to conserve ecosystem come from the Puerto Rico island. So we all know that climate change is impacting animal species in different ways. So in Puerto Rico, we conduct a project to identify and protect suitable areas for animal species in the context of climate change. The exercise we did was to evaluate the ability of existing protected areas to provide safe havens for species in the context of climate change. For doing that, we combine acoustic monitoring, passive acoustic monitoring, and species distribution models of 21 bird and frog species based on past, present, and future climate scenarios to determine how species distributions relate to current distribution of protected areas in Puerto Rico. So we use our Arbimon platform to identify species in the audio recordings, and we create maps that show what areas are more suitable for species occurrence. We then compare these species distribution maps with the distributions of existing protected areas. So what we have found, first, that Puerto Rico is projected to become drier by 2040, 2060. And most worrisome, large portions of suitable areas for birds and frog species is actually outside of protected areas. So our results indicate that present protected areas will not be enough to protect bird and frog species under climate change. However, the establishment of larger protected areas, buffer zones, and increasing the connectivity between the protected areas may allow species to find suitable areas to resist to those environmental changes. And what is most exciting is to know that the Conservation Trust of Puerto Rico is already asking us to use our maps to prioritize the acquisition of lands to protect and conserve species in the island of Puerto Rico.
Such exciting real-world applications of this technology, but what advances are coming in tech to actually help in this conservation space through your work?
I would say that new AI approaches, especially deep learning models, can greatly improve species identification and consequently conservation of biodiversity. Deep learning algorithms such as convolutional neural networks or CNNs provide an alternative approach for multi-label recognition of multiple calls in complex, noisy, and biodiversity environments. They can be used not only to identify species in audio recordings, but also to ID species in photos from camera traps and to predict deforestation, for example. Unfortunately, most people collecting field recordings do not have the math or programming skills to develop these types of models. So right now, in Rainforest Connection, with the help of Huawei, we are working on developing regional CNNs to identify hundreds of species all around the globe. We already have CNNs for Sumatra, Malaysia, Western Amazon, Western Ecuador, Panama, and Puerto Rico. Each one of those CNNs are able to identify hundreds of species, and the idea is actually to use those models in long-term monitoring projects to understand how species are responding to both human and natural impacts.
So incredible. Thank you so much, Marconi. It's fascinating to hear more about your work. And what incredible technology. And I'm so glad to say that the same technology is coming to the UK for the first time in the next few weeks in an effort to protect the endangered red squirrel population. And here to explain more is the chair of the Mammal Society, Dr. Stephanie Ray. So hello.
Hi there.
Dr. Ray, first of all, can you explain why the red squirrel?
Well, it's quite an iconic species, isn't it? Everyone loves a red squirrel. And even though if you live in the south of England particularly, you've probably never seen one these days in real life, everyone's familiar with it from childhood stories or from picture books and so on. And so I think it's in people's hearts as a mammal that's really British, and it's one that we want to protect. And yet it's been declining so severely for the last 100 years, really. And that's reached a critical stage where the species is now endangered, and critically endangered in parts of the country, extinct in a lot of England. And we really need to do something about that.
Can you tell us more about why that is? Just, I guess, an overview of some of those pressures on the species.
Indeed. A lot of it stems from when grey squirrels were first introduced. So grey squirrels, the ones that you'll see in parks in London and
everywhere.
so on, everywhere,
yeah.
Were introduced from North America. And they were introduced as, you know, they looked pretty in people's parklands and so on. And indeed they did. Yeah. But they're a bit bigger and a bit tougher, and they've done rather well at the expense of the red squirrels throughout England. And so in certain habitat types, like in big conifer forests in Scotland, the reds are doing better and are still hanging on. But across a lot of the countryside, the greys have sort of edged their way in and edged their smaller native cousins out. It's a lot more complicated than that, obviously. The greys carry a virus called parapox that the reds are more susceptible to. But what we're really interested in is, well, what else can we do? What else is going on, and can we make some changes that will tip the balance back in favour of the reds?
So tell us more about that then. With this amazing technology, what do you hope to achieve?
Yeah, partly it's around really getting to understand how the squirrels are doing in different parts of the country. So we want to look at places where there are only reds, only greys, and where the two of them are battling it out. And so we want to see if we can pick up on how they're behaving, what those direct interactions between the two species are like, and what else is going on in those woodlands. What can we learn about the general levels of biodiversity in the woodlands where they exist, to see, is there more to this story than just a simple two species competing for the same patch?
And how would this technology help the researchers and conservationists? What does that look like?
Well, traditionally, if you're surveying for squirrels, you're looking directly to see squirrels in the wild, or you're looking for their drays, the nests they make in the trees. And that's quite time consuming, it's quite labour intensive, and it's really just evidence that squirrels were there. It's not giving you much richness of data about how many are there and what they're doing. So having this sort of acoustic monitoring, which will be listening all the time in those forests, we get the opportunity to learn so much more and get a much richer picture of what's happening. We'll see the noises that squirrels make. Are they different when they're close to the different species of squirrels? Are they interacting more? Are they staying quiet and interacting less? How's that affecting their chances of feeding and reproducing and so on? So we can build up much more of a picture of how things are for the red squirrels and what we might be able to change and manipulate a little bit to tip the balance in their favour.
I have to say, hearing that is pretty phenomenal because, and as you say, until now, it's been a case of surveying what you can visually, right? Seeing squirrels and signs of. But
squirrels and signs, which is just such a hugely labour-intensive operation.
Yeah.
We've done it, as ecologists, we've done it for many years, and we're doing it very successfully in parts of the country. There's a lot of great red squirrel conservation work going on. But what this gives us the opportunity to do is really scale that up when we need it most and be able to cover much more ground and learn much more.
And also, I mean, this is a bit of a layman's silly comment, but I don't know what a squirrel sounds like. What does a
I'm not going to do an impression. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's a shame. I tried.
It's a distinct squeaking noise, and we can tell the difference between a red and grey. Somebody with a bit of practice can distinguish the difference by ear, and the AI certainly can.
That's absolutely fantastic. How long before you think you'll end up seeing results and start to get that important data?
Well, at the moment, the researchers from the University of Bristol are busy testing out their kit and seeing how far away they can pick up a squirrel call and so on. And they're looking to put the equipment in place before the next breeding season next spring. So hopefully later in the summer, we'll start to get some results through.
That's incredible. And you mentioned about, obviously, they're a native species, they're a beautiful species, but why is it important to have red squirrel populations back to as they were?
I think what's really important is that we see them as a kind of a flagship of how our woodlands are doing. So it's not just squirrels, it's all of UK biodiversity that's suffering. We're one of the most nature poor countries in Europe, in the world. And we did a piece of work recently called the Red List of British Mammals, where we looked at how populations were doing of all British mammals, and over a quarter of them are at risk of becoming extinct. Now, that's a terrifying statistic, and so we need projects like this that look at the sort of wider biodiversity, how it's doing, and get a picture of how we can improve it. So, yes, red squirrels are lovely. I'm very fond of them myself, but actually they're also a measure of how's biodiversity doing generally in those habitats.
Yeah. And I have to ask, because I am from Wales, is this being set up in North Wales with the red squirrel population there, or?
At the moment, they're concentrating in northern England, but who knows? Who knows? I did have a message recently from a man with some red squirrels in Anglesey, so you never know where the project might go next.
Absolutely brilliant. And I guess kind of a follow-up from that is could this be something that could be rolled out to other mammal populations in the UK because of some of those issues that you mentioned?
Absolutely. I mean, what we're doing with the technology is we're pulling out and identifying the squirrel calls, obviously, but the technology is recording the whole soundscape. So we're picking out everything, and at any point, if we decide we want to listen to foxes or indeed tawny owls, it doesn't have to be a mammal, you know, we can pick out those calls from the AI where they've been registered. And the other interesting thing that we can do is we can filter out all of the sound created by people, the cars and the railways and things, and just listen to the natural sounds. So we can use how loud the natural sound is as a kind of measure of nature, of biodiversity, and how well the natural environment's doing. And so that's a really exciting opportunity for very rapid monitoring of how biodiversity is doing in different locations.
I mean, it is incredible. And as the chair of the Mammal Society, is this ever something you thought you'd be looking at? You listening out for squirrels? Amazing technology.
No, we've listened out for bats for many years, but only the ultrasound calls. We'd never really seen this one coming, particularly. I don't think it's a replacement. I think all our members and our volunteers are still going to be out there doing their surveys at weekends, but it's a great help to cover a lot more ground.
Well, thank you so much for that, because it's absolutely fascinating and exciting in terms of reds and general mammals in the UK. So really appreciate you coming in. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
And technology is also being used to transform agriculture as well, cutting down the use of pesticides and herbicides. An estimated 95% of chemicals sprayed on fields go to waste. But one company in Hampshire has developed robots that can help. Take a look at this.
I'm Sam Watson-Jones, I'm co-founder and president of Small Robot Company. I was sitting on the family farm, not really seeing a very positive future for it, either financially, because the margins were just getting tighter and tighter, or in terms of how we're interacting with the environment. So overusing fertilizers, overusing chemicals. I was worried about the pollution that we were causing, and also soil health. So the farming system that we were operating was just gradually degenerating the soil. Where I started to think initially about, okay, well, what could technology do to solve some of those problems? Our whole purpose is around this concept of per plant farming. So this is the idea that ultimately any farm growing any crop anywhere in the world is going to be able to gather data on every single plant in their field and take action at that same level of detail. So the three robots that we're building are Tom, Dick and Harry. Tom is crop scanning, Dick is crop care, We're also looking at non-chemical weeding functions for DIC. So can we identify individual weeds in a field and then take those weeds out without using any chemicals at all? So the way we're experimenting with is with a non-chemical, an electrical weeding probe. So we're electrifying the weed, killing it without using any chemicals at all. And Harry is precision planting. And they're all governed and controlled by this enormous AI brain that we call Wilma, who's pulling in data from Tom, from the scanning robot, and sending that out as instructions to Dick and Harry. One of the big opportunities in farming at the moment is around carbon sequestration. There are definitely opportunities for farmers to demonstrate the amount of carbon that they're sequestering by being good farmers. One of the things that we're hoping to develop with Tom is around increased soil monitoring and scanning, massively increasing the volume and consistency of soil data that we're able to gather. So we're really hoping that we're going to be able to support the move towards net zero that the farming community is aiming for, but also to support the carbon sequestration market that we think is an enormous opportunity for farmers. The challenge is that any new marketplace needs to be based on really solid data, and at the moment that data doesn't really exist in a large enough form. But that's the opportunity that you have with an autonomous robot, is that it can gather data in exactly the same way, on repeat, 24 hours a day. And so there's a big opportunity around massively improving the way that soils are sampled. And one of the big ways that that'll be demonstrated is around this whole net zero and carbon sequestration market.
So, as we've seen, technology has much to offer, but there's more it can do. And to take advantage of the opportunities ahead, we need to make sure we're training the next generation of engineers, developers, and entrepreneurs with the skills they need. Joining me now is Pallavi Malhotra, head of the ICT Academies program at Huawei, and Yuhai Feng, an MA student in environmental sciences. I'll come to you first, Yuhai. I gather your focus is on atmospheric chemistry, which sounds incredible. Keen to hear more about that. But first, I also gather you've worked on a project to reduce food waste by developing a bin that measures not only how much food is thrown away, but can identify what kind of food is being wasted.
That's actually something that someone else has invented, and I actually came across it during the Tech for Good project during the Seeds program that I participated in this summer. So for the Tech for Good project, we basically had to come up with a technology solution to tackle a specific sustainability development goal. And for our group, we designed a new app to tackle the sustainability development goal related to food poverty and food waste, whilst also hoping to benefit the homeless community. So there were some existing applications like Too Good To Go, you may have heard of it, that were available, but they mainly connected the general public to food waste from supermarkets and restaurants and local shops. But essentially, the homeless community was missed out because we thought that they were very unlikely to have mobile devices that can access these sort of applications. And when I say food waste, it's definitely not the scraps of someone's meals. It's basically all restaurants and takeaways will prepare excess food for the day. So what's being thrown away is actually perfectly edible food and may even be more nutritious than what the homeless eat on a daily on a daily basis. So our group designed an app that can connect the homeless shelters to restaurants and takeaways so that it can put food waste to better use. So basically the AI-powered food waste bin that you just mentioned was invented by a student in Singapore. And basically, the food waste bin can identify the type of food. For example, if you're throwing away curry or steak and chips or fish and chips from restaurants, and also be able to calculate the proportions that are being thrown away. And with this sort of data, then it can present trends to the restaurants and takeaways on how much food is wasted per day, whether the same amount of food of the same the same amount of the same type of food is being thrown away, etc. Which can help restaurants greatly adjust their daily excess food preparation quantities and identify whether they need to reduce serving sizes.
Important bit of technology. So can this be rolled out across in a number of different areas? So I guess in supermarkets as well, and not just restaurants and shops, for example?
Yeah, definitely, because there are already apps that actually, like I said, connect the public with supermarkets and local shops. And as I think a very big culture in the UK is, takeaways, and we love eating out. So it's definitely something that I can see, being rolled out in the UK as well.
Absolutely. And it's important to say you recently graduated from the University of Leeds with a degree in chemistry and maths. So was the environment included in your course at all?
No, it wasn't really, but my interest into sustainability basically started when I got involved in a group project in secondary school, which was actually organised by a non-profit organisation called Team Tech, who basically, like the SEES program, wanted to cultivate the younger generation who were interested in technology, and provided them chances to learn more about new technologies and encouraged innovative solutions with technology. And as sustainability was something that was quite new to me at the time, because in the actual teaching curriculum, we didn't really learn much about it. So I was really excited to learn and get involved in the topic. And as time sort of passed, I wasn't really sure if it was like a sudden interest, or it was actually something that I was passionate about and something that I really wanted to go into in the future. So actually, when I applied for my bachelor's at Leeds, I did decide to go with a broader degree combination than environmental sciences, because I had some doubts about the opportunities that could be given to me after I graduate. That's just mainly because environmental sciences and sustainability was still relatively new to me, and haven't done enough research into the topic yet, or had enough exposure to the topic to be certain that it was something that I wanted to do. But throughout my bachelor's, with more exposure to environmental issues and green technology and big data, I was slowly able to piece together what I wanted to do in the future. So, and ultimately, my passion for the environment never really disappeared. But instead, I found it, still fun to learn and fun to get involved with. So I even started a few upcycling projects myself at home, and also started teaching my friends and my family about the topic, which really leads to where I am today. I'm doing a master's in environmental sciences, in hope to just get back into the field, and get a little bit more exposure in the field. And finally, then, because I'm interested in big data and machine learning, I would really like to get involved with modeling and forecasting, which is part of my research that I'll be doing in my master's, and possibly using models to predict the progress of carbon neutrality or temperature change, which are both quite hot topics today, as you know. Um,
Can you hear me now?
yes, I can.
This is what happens when you talk about technology. We like to test you in these moments. What I was saying is that actually you are very inspiring in that you've gone out to find the courses that you have done based on your passion and interest and understanding that we need that. So are you finding that those courses are now out there? You talked about how it's new to you, environmental sciences, but perhaps it's new to the education system as well.
Yeah, I think schools have a big responsibility to, equip the younger generation with knowledge on what's happening in the real world, and they should essentially encourage students to be creative and innovative, rather than just memorizing class material, for example. And I know the teaching curriculum has changed a lot since I've left school, because I have a younger brother and I can see that the schools are trying to promote problem solving skills more and more now, which is great. And I noticed that you can also take, environmental sciences as an A level now, which was not an option when I did mine. So definitely some great signs of us, going towards a more open-minded community.
Stuff. Now, Pallavi, it's lovely to have you here as well today. Can you explain what the ICT Academy is and how it helps young people into careers in technology?
Great. Lovely to be joining you today, Lizzie, on this very important topic. So earlier, if I could just start by saying earlier, a lot of this number of speakers mentioned about how technology is important around the world and how important it is to make it available around the world. But I believe it's also equally important to make learning resources available around the world so people can actually make use of the technology as well. So what Huawei has done, you heard Yuha speaking earlier about the Seeds of the Future program. This is one of our CSR strands. Another strand of our CSR commitment is the ICT Academy, which I'm responsible for throughout Western Europe. And through this academy program, we make a comprehensive range of learning resources readily available directly to students and teachers. So we have the latest cutting edge, we have this standard foundation type of courses, but we also have a lot of cutting edge technologies around the AI. And we heard how AI has been used today as well, 5G, cloud technologies, all relevant skills. So taking industry knowledge directly to students and teachers allows them to understand what the latest developments are, because technology is just developing at such a rapid rate. For academia, it's not so easy to keep up with that pace, really. And so by providing this online, in terms of, in fact, I think we probably have a slide to show as well in the background. The courses that we provide, this is our website, the ICT Academy. The URL is huaweiacad.com. Anybody's interested, they could just go onto that website and they'll see a whole range of courses. We have around 250 plus courses, but specifically for the Academy, we focused on areas which are growth areas and skills that are required within the ICT sector. And all of our courses have a certification system as well, and 3 different levels. So when learners start on a specific level, maybe associate, professional, those are an expert of the 3 levels. If they start at the associate level, they can still progress onto the next levels, professional and expert, as they move into their working life and after leaving academia as well. So there's continuous development throughout their career as well. So it's a robust. Sorry.
Not at all. I mean, it's a fantastic opportunity, but do you think there's an appetite in the younger generation? I mean, we heard from the inspiring Yuhua about her appetite for machine learning, etc. So have you seen that in the younger generation?
I think when they're exposed to the technology, Lizzie, then there is an interest. But I think at a early age, young people are not really sure what they want to do. And maybe some young people feel that science and STEM subjects are a little too difficult. But if we can make it as easy and simple and accessible as possible, as we do through our academy program, then it sort of, once they get started, it really engages them. This is what I found through my experience of working with young people and the universities, colleges and schools. So we have a number of masterclasses, webinars. We've set up virtual tours so young people can see actually. And here's a picture in the background of one of our centers in China, Galileo Hall. And we've got some virtual tours happening on the 25th and 27th. So people can, all the courses are free, let me say. I don't think I mentioned that. So all of our introductory courses, taster courses, and our certification courses, they're all free. The tour is also free as well. We have webinars arranged and masterclasses arranged. And all of that is also free, but in also to support learners that are not necessarily learning our courses through a university, college or school. And if they're self-learning, then there is also a global support community that we have built as well. So if learners, even teachers can join that as well. If they have technical questions, they can post these questions and they will get answers back from technical experts within 2 hours. If it's a complex question, maybe it might take longer in 24 hours. But the whole support structure is all there for schools, colleges, and universities to take advantage of and make all of the resources, industry resources, available to their students. So I would urge academia to take up this free program with no membership. We even train the teachers at the universities and colleges and schools as well. So there's no financial commitment whatsoever on the academics at all, because Huawei actually has invested a lot of money within education, and everything is covered in this proper CSR program.
Brilliant. Pallavi, you've talked in the past about how your school and college actively encouraged you away from STEM subjects. Can you tell us a bit more about that and your journey, and actually what's often regarded as something of a male-dominated sector?
Yes. So Lizzie, I've been in the technology industry now for 45 years. I was one of the first female engineers in the UK, telecommunications engineers in the UK, back in 1976. I joined British Telecom when they started taking on women into male-dominated fields after the Sex Discrimination Act of 75. But the school that I attended, I remember it was very, very difficult for me to even have any, do the do any even a secondary level, CSE level, to even do science subjects. So we were encouraged more to do home economics, cookery, and learn how to wash and bake cakes. And well, that wasn't really my interest at all. So my parents had to really fight for me to actually get on to doing the STEM subjects in physics, chemistry, maths, biology, which is what my interest was. And this is what helped me and gave me a good grounding to be able to get the job with British Telecom as one of 5 female engineers. So I was very pleased that I was able to do this.
Fantastic. I'll come to you first, Yuhua. What more can be done to attract more young people like yourself, and particularly more women and girls, into STEM careers? Because obviously hearing from Pallavi there and hearing about her journey is, I'm sure, inspiring to you as well as it is to me.
Yeah, I think first of all, from a student's point of view, I would like to see more companies to partner with universities for a more targeted marketing of events. So maybe universities could have what we call green ambassadors for each department, who can be in charge of collecting all sorts of opportunities related to green tech, sustainability, environmental sciences, and maybe just pass it around to students. And there are obviously, large scale events that that companies host, or national organizations host, and students are encouraged to listen in on. But in many of those events, students may be anxious to participate in such big events, and they're always a bit too formal, I think. So maybe small scale workshops or talks would work a little bit better. And just thinking back to my university, we have something called discovery credits, which allow students to choose modules that are outside of their subject area. So, for example, someone studying civil engineering can take a module in environment and business, for example. And I have seen some similarities across other universities from what my friends tell me. But I would like to see more of these, out of curriculum opportunities, so students can discover their passions. Because like what Pallavi was just saying, a lot of students at university, myself included, don't actually know what they want yet. And it's just a case of increasing exposure when they're, still developing their interests and trying to find themselves.
And same question to you, Pallavi. What more can be done?
I think we already did with some of the things that I already mentioned, Lizzie, in terms of masterclasses, webinars, virtual tours, and making learning accessible to everybody easily, where it could be, they can pick up their phone and do a little bit of learning while they're traveling, or on their tablets, before they're going to bed, or even at colleges and universities, for teachers to encourage um, all young people, especially women, because it's important that we have more women within the tech sector as well. But also, if colleges and universities were able to engage more with industry, invite various people in that do different types of job roles within the tech sector to talk about what they do, how their journey, what qualifications they needed, how they actually got there. I think that would be very, very important. But also encouragement from parents as well. And the other thing I've found is that on our Global Community Centre, when we hold some of these events, we have these lucky draws, and we have competitions, an annual competition as well, lots of prizes. And on our global support community, we have this Hicoin virtual currency, where every time they visit the site, or they like something or make a comment or post anything, then they collect Hicoins. As they build up these Hicoins, they can cash them in for Amazon vouchers or Huawei gadgets or even exam vouchers. So all of these types of things really encourage young people to participate. And once they participate, then they get engaged, and hopefully then we can, sort of do more work with them and show them the value of doing tech, really. So that's what engages them, yeah, I've found.
Well, thank you, Pallavi. Thank you, Yuhua, for your thoughts and your stories today. I mean, it's brilliant to hear from you both, and inspiring from both ends there, absolutely. So thank you so much. And that's all we've got time for today. Technology is clearly part of the solution to the challenges. There's so many challenges that we face. People are more engaged than ever to confront the reality of the rising global temperatures, which is so important. And there's nothing more important than protecting our home. So please do check out the Tech Podcast, where you'll be hearing more from experts discussing the latest developments in technology. Search Huawei, the Tech Podcast. A massive thank you to everyone who's been part of this wonderful live today. A massive thank you to you all watching at home, and we'll see you very soon. Goodbye.